Hello there, my beautiful audience, and welcome to attaQ. Now, I want to play something for you, something I published on Instagram and some other social platforms. So let me just play this thing for you. Okay, so very quickly, these are 3 pieces of music recorded one by one and then put together. And that's basically it. So it's one part from music, and then the other 2 parts are something I recorded inside AUM. And I was using the audio that came from music inside AUM in a file player, and I was playing on top of it. And the reason to why I'm highlighting the fact that I'm using no sequencer, no syncing, no linking, nothing like that is because it is one of 2 things I mainly get asked about whenever I'm posting musical pieces I've made with older apps. Why is that? Well, when you're using older apps, you're using apps that usually don't support any of the modern technologies that we've become accustomed to. In the case of music, it does have an internal clock, but it's only important for the note generator blocks, where you actually have steps and a step sequencer. But I wasn't using that for my piece either. No, nothing. I made a thing in music, I let it play, I recorded it. I then took the audio, put it in AUM, and played synthesizers over it. Nothing is synced, nothing is linked, nothing is sequenced. I didn't need any of it. I'm just playing instruments. And the point of this video is that sometimes you don't need any of these technologies in order to make music. All you need is a way of actually just recording the result of whatever you're doing. So what's going on inside music is actually quite random, and it's way more interesting than anything I did in AUM, so let's jump over to that next. Let me begin by saying that what's going on in here is pretty random. In fact, it's so random, I had to sit here and screen record this bit for 15 minutes before I heard the thing I actually want to use, the thing you can now hear in this video and also in the video I posted on Instagram. Let me just pause this. The things that are actually generating sounds and notes are these things here. They are basically sample players. So they play back samples every time they bounce off something. And then you have a horizontally placed scale in the background. So how are melodies being created here? Well, it's very random because, as you can see, they're being flung back and forth wildly here, and that's very much thanks to the movement of these 4 blocks here. And the movement is actually what's creating the rhythm and timing of the melody. So they're basically making stuff just swing around, they're dragging stuff back and forth with the help of rubber bands. So all of the note blocks are attached to the big blocks with rubber bands. And I can also add that the middle block here, which is attached to all of the blocks at the same time, that's what's creating the main melody. So the rapid notes are basically being created when the blocks are coming together and they're kind of squeezing the little square here and making it bounce around rapidly. So the 4 big blocks, how are they moving? Well, they're static blocks that I recorded animations for by hand. You see, when I started animating them, I was animating them going towards the middle and out to the outer edge at the same time. But because of how I'm human and not really an android and can't do it, perfectly, well, each loop ends a little bit sooner or later than a loop for another block. So it's not perfect. And if you play it for long enough, they're gonna get out of sync. And as you can see here, they're out of sync because I've been playing this for 15 minutes. Are you starting to see how randomness was in control here? How I couldn't control all of the bits, the music happening in here. I had to patiently sit and wait and watch and listen for 15 minutes before I had the magic happen. One of the things that I'm very happy with is how I get this. There's this coin collecting sound. Sounds almost like a NES game sound. And throughout this project, there was always a chance that I never got anything out of it at all. I could have been sitting here for 2 hours without ever finding that magical moment. And I was okay with that because I just simply wanted to be creative and get out of my comfort zone. And here we get to a point where I just want to tie everything down to a single point of the video, and that is, do not allow your creativity to be held back by some technical acronyms. AUV3, MIDI, IAA, Link. Don't let these things stand in the way of your creativity and your aha moments. I'm afraid you're going to be missing out on some very eye-opening and mind-blowing experiences if you're sitting around waiting for support for some tech that app is missing right now. And I mean, in some cases, these things just add up to more complicated settings that you have to do, and that might work against your creativity too. The only tech I was really relying on here was a way of recording audio. I see discussions pop up all over the web about people discounting certain apps because they don't include certain technologies. And in those cases, if you're thinking like that, ask yourself if you really need that tech to be creative with that app. Don't get hung up on technologies. Just try it out and let your creativity flow free, which is something that Rushi did with music. Just check this out. It's a cow and it's got so many details. I hope it's a she cow because there's something coming out. And then she used a block here to make it chew. And then there are a bunch of insects and they're flying around, and are they pooping? I just love what she did here. So creative. And then she used snippets, samples of her voice. Personally, for me, audio and visuals are very important, just as important. I can't really separate them. Sometimes I start with the music and then I add visuals to my music. And sometimes I start with the visuals like I do in music, and the music kind of happens afterwards. Yeah, that's about it. You'll find app links and video links down in the description. And if you do end up trying out music, there is a free version. But if you want to go for the pro version, don't do the in-app purchase through the free version because it doesn't seem to be working. If you want the pro version of music, go to the App Store and find the pro version and buy it that way. As usual, I wish you a very productive week. Now go finger all of your stuff and have a lot of fun doing it. I'm about to tell you about my chili sauce adventures, and if you end up watching this, at the end of it, why don't you post a little chili emoji in the comments? Back in 2022, I made a video about generative MIDI plugins or generative music apps. And towards the end of that video, I showed you how me and my partner were growing potatoes on our balcony. Now, we were using a soil very rich in nutrients because it's basically our food waste. It all goes into this bokashi compost, and then that compost turns into soil, and we use that soil to grow our stuff. Now, we were still doing that in 2023, only we weren't growing potatoes. We were growing chilies. And here you can see them right now. They're in a stage where they're not quite ripe. They're not that strong. They're quite mild. And I really like how they taste when they're green like this. So I brought them in and I washed them and I basically chop them up because the plan is to make some kind of a chili paste that I'm then frying in oil. The next thing I do is I heat up some cumin seeds. Basically, take a bunch of cumin seeds and I put them in a pot which is dry. There's no oil or anything. I just want to heat them up to get all those. The seeds contain a sort of oil, and when you heat that up, it just makes the spices become more prominent. Yeah, I don't know how to explain it. I'm having a hard time how to English today. Put them in there, heat them up, and once you're done doing that, you start pounding them a little bit. And at this point, you can really smell them, and it smells really, really good. After that, I start adding the chilies, and then I start adding some garlic. And in this case, I would have loved to grow my own garlic, but we didn't really have a space for that or enough sun, so we bought some from the store. But they are eco garlic because it tastes better and more ripe than the regular brand or the regular sort. Now, there's this one thing I like doing with my chili sauce, and that is to add a bit of chopped up red paprika. This is also eco paprika, of course, because that's how we roll. Chop some up into the pot with the olive oil. And normally you would maybe roast them and get the skin off the paprika. I didn't do that because, well, I'm lazy. So while that is frying, I'm also at the same time adding some oil to my paste mix here with chili and cumin seeds. Spices flow into the oil and it just helps the paste taste better. So I then put all of it with the paste into the oil and I'll fry it. And then at some point, it's time to add the big main ingredient, which are smashed tomatoes. And I use this brand almost always because it's not cheap. It's eco tomatoes, but it doesn't cost that much. And the taste from these tomatoes are always top notch. I've bought like cheaper brands of tomatoes before, and they just don't smell good. They don't taste good. Sometimes they just outright smell and taste like they're completely unripe, and I get stomach pain from eating them. But these ones, they taste really, really good. They feel ripe, and I don't get stomach pains from eating them. And then I just let this boil and simmer for a little bit until it thickens. And then I just add salt to taste. And the last thing I do is I put them in jars that I've what do you call it? Disinfected? Well, basically, I pour really, really hot water in them. Oh, yeah, that's some salad I made with some. I'm supposed to eat this sauce with that. So the sauce, you can use it hot or cold, and that's about it. I'm sorry for my very janky speech pattern. Now, if you watched for this long and you saw this whole chili thing, why don't you put a little chili emoji in your comments? And then everyone else who didn't watch, they're going to be wondering, what's going on with the chili emojis? Thank you for watching. I love you. Bye.